So on my blog you'll find a table which has the strengths and the weaknesses of Kant's deontological theory of ethics. Now I'm simply going to just talk you through them. That's the purpose of this video. Now I personally don't like Kantian ethics. I find it's very cold-hearted, unrealistic, and I don't really see the point of actually utilizing this theory. As you'll see later on, one of the weaknesses is Kant suggests that happiness is a byproduct of being moral. It should not be the intention of being moral. The intention should be duty. However, my intention to be moral is not duty. I just simply cannot say that I should be good because it's my duty to be. It just simply doesn't sit with me. I feel I should be good because it's going to help my character, it's going to help the world, and it will help happiness come about through it. Therefore, I can never be a neo-Kantian, as it were. So you'll see clearly from the table that I'm against Kantian ethics simply because there are 5 strengths I could only think of, and there are 10 weaknesses. For the purposes of essay, you may need more strengths for Kantian ethics, and what I would suggest you do is either look at other sites like Tutor2U, because I simply could not think of them, or use the strengths which are general strengths of absolutist theories. I have another table which has strengths and weaknesses of absolutist versus teleological theories, and then if you use those strengths they will apply to Kant's theory and it works just the same. So let me go through the strengths quickly. So what Kant does essentially is something very different. He creates a distinction between duty and inclination. Now inclination is like our desire to do something because it might benefit us, it might benefit something we want, or we're inclined to do it for a particular reason. But morality is something above inclination, above something that I know I have to do this because of X, Y, Z. It's about duty. It's about that I will do this because it is my duty. It shows that morality is something which extends beyond that. I don't actually think people 100% understand distinctions between duty and inclination and the understanding what is reason and all these things. They seem very complex, so I'm not sure to a certain extent how this would sort of lure you to follow Kantian ethics. The second strength is it makes justice impartial, because you can't promote happiness if that happiness undermines another happiness, and this is a criticism of utilitarianism. Now what this means is that you cannot say that it's okay to go around doing things for yourself because it makes you feel happy. It's not okay. The reason being because your happiness, which may be in getting to the top position, may undermine your employee's happiness, which might be to get to that top position as well, except you use them and you leave them behind. Your happiness is undermining their happiness, so what Kant is saying, you cannot do this. And this in some situations, like I was talking about the workplace, it makes sense. You can't use people as a means to an end, whereas utilitarianism says it's fine to undermine the happiness of the few for the majority. But Kantian ethics looks at the wider picture, looks at human rights, and it shows that there's more to morality, as mentioned before. Similarly, the third reason is it gives humans intrinsic worth, dignity, respect, value. It's all about, these are things people really care a lot about, and Kantian ethics is a method, simply because particularly of the second formulation, do not use somebody as a means to an end but rather an end in themselves. Because of that, it just promotes what people are really lured by: human rights, having freedom, having value, having dignity. These are all things people want and they want to give. So this might be a reason why you might be lured into following Kantian ethics. The fourth reason is it kind of suggests that it suggests we are equal individuals, unlike some forms of Christian ethics. Now what I mean by this is some forms of Christian ethics will say, you're a sinner, you don't believe in God, you're not equal to us, God will select us, we have more priority. When I'm looking at giving money to charity, I will never give a charity to people like you because you don't believe in God, you're not equal to people who believe in God. This is like a big generalization, I know, but I'm talking about just one specific example of a type of way where a type of ethical system which people are discriminated against. So what Kant is saying, we are all equal, hence you treat everybody as an end in themselves, not as a means to an end. You treat everyone with dignity, value, etc. However, one of my weaknesses, I rather just mention it now because it seems to fit in. Kant says that everyone, in order to fulfill his theory, must be a rational moral agent. However, as we can see, not everyone fits this criteria. What if you have a mental illness, you're a child, you're an embryo, because some Kantians go as far as to say that embryo is a human, hence cannot be used as a means to an end. But these are all examples of non-rational human beings. So can they really be fitting into this whole Kantian ideology? No, I don't think so. Anyway, the last strength is it's easy to follow, it's got a clear criteria, you know what you're doing, and you know what? In theory, it can work. So it's a good theory. Now let's look at my favorite, the weaknesses. So we saw one that's not actually equal because it suggests you have to be a rational human being to make moral decisions, and however there are many examples of people in the world who are not rational moral agents, maybe because of issues which don't affect or which they could not control, like mental illness, etc., etc. Hence the theory is not universal. Second weakness: what happens if two duties conflict? So for example, you have a duty to protect the vulnerable. At the same time, you have a duty not to lie. But if a man comes with you with an axe saying, I am to kill so and so, you have a duty not to lie, but then you have a duty to protect the person's life who is going to die as a result of the man with the axe. What do you do when the two duties conflict? And what Kant says simply to this is that one of these duties is not true. And in these kind of situations, it's tricky to sit and think, oh my god, which duty is not true? If a man is right there asking you, then your emotions, you're drawn to protect your friend, you will give the wrong direction. It doesn't actually work. This also makes the theory impractical, is what I've written, and I've given other examples that how can we have the same duty in a hospital to care for all patients when you are faced with a fixed budget? You have to state this is a case which is basically futile. It's got to go. You can't waste money on it. You can't say that I'm gonna treat this person equally to I'm gonna treat that person. You can't do it. The second weakness is personalized rules do not exist as they cannot be universalized. Now, this might seem an advantage because you have universal rules. It makes more sense. It stops people from saying, oh, I can do this, but you can't do this, particularly with the third formulation, the kingdom of ends. However, everybody's situation is personal, different, and they can't be the same. So rules are created to do with your person, your character, your life, and they can't be universalized. So the theory kind of fails if you can't universalize a maxim. The third weakness is no room for compassion, sympathy. As I was saying with the man with the axe example, you are taken away by these. We are humans, we are mortals, we are not robots or cold-hearted animals. Hence, we need compassion and sympathy, and his theory does not show that. It's impractical, and I don't even know why people follow it, to be honest. The fourth weakness, what I want to question, what is more important, consequences, people, or actions? Surely with the man in the axe example, the consequences are more important. You've saved someone's life. Or is it more important to do with a person's character, that you build your character, you live once, you build your character, you don't restrict yourself according to whether an action is good or bad. According to Kantian ethics, a moral person is one that commits all the moral deeds, so it's not the wrong, basically it's a act-centered theory, and all I'm saying is that you only live once. Surely an agent-centered theory like virtue theory makes more sense because you develop your character, and it would lead to more happiness than an act-centered theory, in my opinion. The fifth weakness is Kant's second formulation. You cannot use a person as a means to an end, but rather you should use them as an end in themselves. It's very difficult in terms of world politics. For example, if we were using Kantian ethics on a global scale, that means that we could not sacrifice 100 soldiers to save a country of millions. It's not designed for world politics. It's not designed to be used in the world. I think, as the name suggests, it's a theory. It's not realistic, and to be honest, it doesn't work. Another thing with his theory is that it's actually vague. Now, I said, oh, it's clear cut, you get clear cut instructions, etc., etc., but actually it's vague. The reason being, no two moral situations are the same. The characters are different, the context is different, pragmatics are different, everything is different. So how can the same maxim apply to two situations? And if a maxim cannot be applied to all situations, then theory fails, because you're supposed to see if this action can be universalized. And if you cannot universalize it because every situation is so different, then the whole theory fails. And it also brings up the question, is murder the same as self-defense, the same as suicide, same as abortion? How many maxims do you start creating? It starts getting relentless, boring, and confusing. The theory only works if everyone follows it. Unlike natural law, virtue theory, for natural law you don't need everyone to follow it. It's more about, if you're following, it's more for you. For Kantian ethics, everyone has to follow it. Virtue theory, again, only you have to follow it. It's your character. You will reach the spiritual eudaimonia. Kantian ethics, everyone has to follow it, because then if everyone doesn't follow it, then the whole principle of universalization doesn't work. And obviously we can see from the world today, not everyone agrees with Kantian ethics. Not hardly, I would say, small percentage of people actually follow it. I feel it would be impossible to follow it in this day and age. So does that actually work? The 8th weakness we're up to. It commits a naturalistic fallacy. So Moore says one cannot derive an ought from an is. So basically you can't derive what you should do, a value, an opinion, from an is, from a fact. So for example, just because a moral law exists doesn't mean we ought to follow the moral law, like Kant suggests. And also you bring up the question that can ought really imply can? Isn't this just rubbish, basically, is all I would say. I already talked about, is it really universal, so I can go on to the last weakness. Kant argues that happiness is the byproduct of morality, not the intention behind it. So I question, is this really logical? If happiness is the byproduct, not the intention, and the intention is duty, why should any layman follow Kantian ethics? Why would he want to embrace his duty? Surely because of happiness. But then happiness becomes the intention. So what he's saying actually makes no sense whatsoever. You should do something for happiness. You only live once. Why should you do it out of duty? And that is all duty out of a theory which a guy called Immanuel Kant so many years ago created. Seems bizarre. Anyway, I just want to talk you through this. Probably got a very negative aspect of the theory from me. Sorry for that. Please visit my blog for the table.